Are you ready for our third storyteller? You are, because it's Sally Breedlove, and she's amazing. And she's been on all of our stages. She's a phenomenal storyteller. And Sally is the proud single mama of 3 kitties, only one of which was planned. I love that. I was like looking forward to saying that sentence. Having slipped the noose of codependency, she has vowed to always pick herself up, dust herself off, and kiss her own boo-boos when she takes a tumble on the proverbial playground. That is a good bio. You know, if someone writes a bio like that, they're going to tell a great story, right? Yeah. This is Sally Breedlove.
I think so. Oh, you made it short for me. That was so nice. Hi. So children are great observers of the world around them, particularly when it comes to relationships. And I've been obsessed with mothers and the concept of mothers since I was small. I remember when my neighbor Allison was 5 and I was 8, and she fell down and scraped herself up. And as the tears were streaming down her face, she wailed, "I want my mommy." And for some reason, that really hit me at that age. I had never thought very hard about this really common phrase. And I thought about it then when I witnessed it, because whenever I fell down, I just cried. I didn't cry for anybody. And I was always in charge of comforting myself. And that's because my parents died when I was very small. I didn't know them. I don't have memories of them. I didn't find out their cause of death until I was 13. I didn't see any pictures of them until I was 16. And I didn't hear the details that really made up the beginning of my life story until I was in my 20s from my older sister, actually as part of StoryCorps coming through Gainesville. And so when Isabel told me about what happened, my parents were getting divorced, and I was 2, and my brother John was 9, and Isabel was 11. And my dad came by our house unannounced. So my mom asked my sister to take my brother and me over and play at the neighbor's house. And just a few weeks before that, she had taken Isabel aside, as an 11-year-old girl, and said, "This is the desk with all the important paperwork in our family, in case anything should ever happen," which it did on that day. And so my father shot my mother and then killed himself while we were next door. And so after that, a relative raised my brother, sister, and me in her home. And even though I was only 2 when this happened, I just knew she wasn't my mom. Like I said, kids are observant. So looking at my brother and sister and me, we all look similar with olive skin and dark hair. Whereas this family member was, pale skin and blue eyes and blonde hair. And that friend Allison growing up, her family had darker hair. So if our 2 families went out to dinner somewhere, the hostess always wanted to put us on the neighbor's side because we looked closer to them than the people who actually were related to me by blood. And so she did her best to fill that role for us, but she had kids close to my age, and she just treated my brother, sister, and me different than how she treated them. And so what I was really looking for growing up was this female figure to be proud of me and help guide me from adolescence to adulthood. Or at the very least, to let me know when I'm supposed to shave my legs. Because when I asked at age 8, apparently that was way too young. And I just thought somebody would tell me, and this is the age you do that. But by the time 13 rolled around, you just look around and you're like, I am the last one. So bare minimum, I wanted that. And so I started looking outside of my family unit for this kind of female guidance. And that ended up happening for me a lot in high school. And so Mrs. Rowe was my English teacher for 2 years, and she took my daily wardrobe of costumes for creativity and encouraged me to never stop dressing up, which I very much took to heart because anytime there's a costume party, I am there. I have a closet full of costumes. I used to work at the medieval fair. I actually work somewhere right now where they encourage you to dress up goofy if it's for a special occasion, which is like throughout the year, so that's pretty awesome. And then somebody else who really helped me out in my adolescence was the high school librarian. And what had happened was I moved several times in middle school, which is the pits ever. Middle school's awful. Why did I have to go to 3 different ones? And so I finally made friends my 8th grade year, friends that I thought, I feel this connection. I'm finally settling into my new place. And then they all ended up going to a different high school that they were zoned for. So freshman year, I was back to being by myself. And the cafeteria terrified me. I was super shy. There were hundreds of kids, and I didn't know any of them. And so I just chose a table and sat down. But then when you're that lone student sitting down, like, who's going to sit with you who doesn't know you? So freshman year was pretty miserable for me. I did have a few other people who sat at the table with me, but it was pretty easy from a kid's perspective to look over and say, that's the reject table. And if you're doubting me, the high school principal came over daily and had conversations with us. And so sophomore year, I found out that I could actually take my lunch in the library. So I was there as soon as I found out about that. And Mrs. Cunningham was the school librarian, and she was great. She really encouraged my already bookish sensibilities because I had a hard time connecting with people. I brought my books everywhere, and those kind of count as friends, right? And so for the next 3 years in high school, I took my lunch in the library. She supported me in my reading, but the really big thing she did was she provided that space for my other nerdy friends and me. And so both of these women in high school kind of really helped me feel comfortable being me. And they deeply influenced me to the point that after college, I was a teacher for 4 years. I gave that a go, and I thought, man, Mrs. Rose, she's so dedicated. And actually, I've been a librarian for the past 6 years. And so I'm friends with them on Facebook. I wrote to Mrs. Cunningham when I graduated my master's program for librarianship saying, you inspired me, and I want to provide this great space for people who are in need of it. And because she's a teacher, like, it got lost in the papers on her desk until she retired. So she didn't find my letter until years later. But she found me on Facebook and added me. So I was really grateful to them for kind of being my school mothers. But then in college and beyond, I didn't have those influences anymore. And so I was seeking this mothering energy in college, and instead of finding it in other people, what ended up happening was I became the mom energy for the people around me in my friendships, in my romantic relationships, for my pets, as you heard at the beginning. And I gave other people a lot and rarely asked for anything in return. And so it ended up being lopsided relationships with people. I had girlfriends who, they would come cry on my shoulder about things happening. And then if something happened to me, I'd turn around and they're not there. Or with boyfriends, I kind of picked up where their moms dropped them off at college, cooking food and folding their clothes. And I'm really not even kidding. At one point, I snapped at this one boyfriend, will you please just tie your shoes? I just can't stand it. You're going to trip and fall. And I really remember the rage in that moment when I said that. We broke up like 2 months later. But that was the moment where I had the realization, I am his mom and I don't want to date my son. And so it's really hard making and keeping friends when you're trying to be their mom. And so it was a few years ago that I was passing through Boulder, Colorado. I was going to a Buddhist retreat. I'm Buddhist. And Boulder, Colorado, if you haven't been there, is kind of like the really cool hip sister to Gainesville. It's a little liberal college. They have a Buddhist university there. They're very crunchy. Yoga on the courthouse lawn. No camping, please. And so I told myself, if you're in Boulder and you come across an esoteric shop, I'm a tarot reader, you will get a reading. And the thing about tarot or these other things is, yeah, I could do it for myself, but you kind of overanalyze all the thoughts in your head. And sometimes it's just nice to have somebody else tell you some stuff about yourself. And so I came across this lady in a shop with all the funky books that I like. And I told myself, okay, you're going to go get a reading from her. And so she had this system. It was like playing cards plus my birth date. And so she looks at the cards and tells you some stuff. But before she even did all that, she invited my animal totems in, which I don't know a whole bunch about that, but she was saying, oh, I see a doe and a rabbit. And I kind of had the thought, all right, those are some mama creatures, like fertility, good listeners, so delicate and feminine. And so as she's laying these cards out for me, she tells me, so like I said, I was there for a retreat. But I didn't tell her. I'm just like, yeah, I'm passing through. I don't really, I don't like people asking fishing questions. I kind of just want to know, what is your message for me? And so she said, as she looked down, I see that you're in search of a teacher or a mentor. And I just kind of let that sit there. And then she said, you've been looking for a long time. And this was like an arrow to my heart, you guys. It was just so on the money and painful. And I had never articulated that. Looking back, I can see all these instances where I'm trying to win my teachers and librarian over and stuff. But to have a complete stranger tell me this very hard truth about myself, my eyes just like filled up. And, but I was, at that point in my life, I didn't like showing any vulnerability to people, so it was a lockdown. I'm just like eyes full, like blinking rapidly, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. And then I told her, but now that you've said that, I feel like I've been looking for a while. And there's a saying, if when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And it kind of makes you feel inadequate, like, where's my teacher? Am I not ready for one yet? And so she's looking and examining my cards, and she finally just says to me, somebody might not arrive because you're a very capable person. And I actually left that feeling disappointed, like, I don't feel capable, and oh well, I came here for a reading. I wanted to see what the message was. And so more recently, like in the past year and a half, I actually run a tarot group where we meet up, we study the cards together, we read for each other. And so somebody else was doing a lesson, and we had a book called Who Are You in the Tarot? And so we were all looking at, based on our birth dates, what is our personal teacher card? And so my personal teacher card came up, and it was the Wheel of Fortune. And this time I cried, like all the barriers were broken. My nose gets like super puffy and red. It's like very inelegant crying in front of people that I've been reading tarot with for years. And so when I look at this card, it's like this wheel. And it for me, it makes me think of, in Buddhism, the wheel, the cyclical birth and rebirth, samsara and karma at work. And I recognize my teacher, this wheel, it represents life. And so the picture, it's actually kind of like an old mill water wheel. And there's a person strapped to this wheel. And as the water is going, the person will either be above the water, they're lucky then, or under the water, you're unlucky. And these are just life forces that are outside of our control. And so looking at the tarot and seeing, you know what, Sally? Life is your teacher. This is why nobody's arrived yet. And so I don't look at tarot as something that is fortune telling, future telling. I don't look at it as the great beyond that I have to contact. I really see it as a psychological tool to have a conversation with myself that for whatever reason, I just wasn't able to reach that point before. And so last year, 2018, was when I really started delving at, how am I interacting with people? What are my relationships with people? How do I feel about mothers and mothering? And I ended up going to Codependence Anonymous meetings. And it's a 12-step program. And whether or not you identify with the label of codependent, the purpose of CODA is to have healthy relationships with people. And whenever I talk to people about codependency, if you're just relying on the word and don't really know about all the background of it, codependency sounds like, yeah, everybody, depends on somebody to a certain extent. But with codependency, it's kind of like you're kind of twisting your relationships where you're relying too much on other people or you're trying to manipulate them in a certain way. And so as I was going to these support groups where all you do is share and all you do is listen to other people, and it makes you feel a lot less alone when you realize that you're not the only one who's had deranged relationships with people in your life. And I realized that I had some of these patterns of behavior where I wasn't able to connect with my own emotions. Like I didn't know what I was feeling. I just felt physical anxiety or pressure or stomach aches, and I didn't know how to identify it. I actually was carrying around for a while like a feeling wheel, like I feel positive or negative and sad, and what kind of sad, and it keeps going out to kind of help you identify these things. But I recognized that basically all these things that I was doing for my friends, for my romantic partners, for my pets, I didn't mention it before, but I adopted a feral cat, and then he was a jerkface and scratched me up at the very beginning, and I'm like, what? I saved you. How could you not love me? These are unrealistic expectations to have, okay? And so, I was looking at my love and goodwill as these transactional things, and I was keeping score, and they weren't playing fair, giving me the points back that I gave them. And so I recognized, that's not normal behavior. And you think you're doing a good job being the mommy to all the people. And what the thing is you want somebody to mommy you. That's why you're doing it. And so, it finally dawned on me. I wanted unconditional love from somebody. And the person that the people that you expect to give that to you are your parents. And so what if they're not around? How do you do that? And so it came to me with, these lessons through tarot, Buddhism, therapy, CODA, that, the person most suited to love me, to trust in my abilities, to cheer me on, it was me. And so it's taken me 3+ decades, but I'm really comfortable being myself. I had a moment in the shower last year that I had gotten divorced. It was kind of really rough, and I'm in the shower, just la-di-da, not thinking about anything, and this thought pops into my head, and this thought said, you know what, Sally? You're a pretty cool person. You are worthwhile and cool, and you don't need other people to do that for you. And so now that I've recognized that, I can actually freely give, to my family and friends. I can be kind and generous and fun, and I'm not expecting them to pay that back to me. And so the woman that I was looking for to guide me in my life finally arrived, and she was here all along.